Hello YouTube! As promised, we are back. Same background, same shirt, same terrible hair. I don't think I've ever felt as ugly as I have in the last couple of videos, but we will power through it. Today's video is going to be about the 5 books that I recommend if you are a Democrat or a liberal, to give you some perspective on the right and how the right feels about certain aspects of culture and the economy and why they maybe feel the way they do. And both of these videos were, of course, inspired to kind of bring people back together. I know that my channel is definitely a bit divisive, and those people who have been with me for a while, you guys do know that I do lean right, especially more so over the last 5 years. But I definitely am somebody who always wants to have a channel that is open to everybody's commentary, to everybody's feedback, regardless if left or right. I definitely don't want to ever be the kind of person who ends up in an echo chamber, because I think that is how we actually ended up in this terrible situation that we are and were. And because people on both sides, now it's just like, oh, you don't agree with me, I'm gonna block you. And I'm just only gonna stay in my echo chamber more and more and more. And we're increasingly becoming more and more people who cannot in any way, shape, or form deal with anybody's opposing opinion and being able to just have discussions and debates about things. So everything is like, either you agree with me or you're bad and you're out. And this is both sides, okay? And one more thing really quick. Planned live stream on Sunday, 5 p.m. Western USA time. Okay, calculate that out yourself, and I'm gonna put it in the bottom again. Hope to see you there with your questions, comments, feedback on how terrible my hair has been, and everything else. So this video, before I get into the book reviews, because there's a fable that I think to me represents the left, or the way that the left these days is dealing with their platform. One of the things I said that personally has pushed me away from the left is that I don't think the platform makes any sense. You know, they have all these opposing, like basically the left just wants to be pro-minority, and which in itself sounds great, but as I mentioned in that video, and I'll try to, if I can remember, I'll link it below. The problem is that all these minorities are not working together and they're not conducive for each other, right? So I think the platform in itself doesn't make sense, because on the one hand they want to like support trans rights, but then they want to support Muslim rights, and I'm like, well, the Muslims don't like trans people. You know, they want to support immigration, but they also want to support the black community, but immigration predominantly hurts the black community. So it's like they have all these factions in a way, and they're trying to bring them all together, and in a way it doesn't make any sense. So before I get into this one's book review, I wanted to read the fable. It's called The Animal School. I'm sure you guys have all heard it before, and I think to me this really represents why I don't personally jive. I'm such a bad word, I can't think of a better word. Why I personally don't agree with the left and their stance, because it doesn't make any sense to me. It's a very short fable, okay? Once upon a time, the animals decided they must do something heroic to meet the problems of a new world. So they organized a school. They had adopted an activity curriculum consisting of running, climbing, swimming, and flying. To make it easier to administer the curriculum, all the animals took all the subjects. The duck was excellent in swimming, in fact, better than his instructor, but he made only passing grades in flying and was very poor in running. Since he was slow in running, he had to stay after school and also drop swimming in order to practice running. This was kept up until his web feet were badly worn and he was only average at swimming. But average was acceptable in school, so nobody worried about that, except the duck. The rabbit started at the top of the class in running, but had a nervous breakdown because of so much makeup work in swimming. The squirrel was excellent in climbing until he developed frustration in the flying class, where his teacher made him start from the ground up instead of the treetop down. He also developed a Charlie horse from overexertion and then got a C in climbing and a D in running. The eagle was a problem child and was disciplined severely. In the climbing class, he beat all the others to the top of the tree, but insisted on using his own way to get there. At the end of the year, an abnormal eel that could swim exceedingly well and also run, climb, and fly a little had the highest average and was valedictorian. The prairie dogs stayed out of school and fought the tax levy because the administration would not add digging and burrowing to the curriculum. They apprenticed their children to a badger and later joined the groundhogs and gophers to start a successful private school. Does this fable have a moral? So to me, yes, it does. I think for me, and how I see the left right now is in a lot, and this is something I've talked about in a lot of my videos, is that I think the left has all these things where it's like they're going to try to do hiring quotas and affirmative action, and we have to change people, we have to make people use certain pronouns and all these things to constantly just more and more the idea of just allowing people to naturally excel what they excel at, to allow people to find their own path, to allow the market to figure out itself where certain things are. I think the left is constantly trying to be like, okay, no, we have to make everybody average, yeah, and that is kind of also why I don't like the idea of socialism and communism. And again, another reason why I find the left so confusing, because the left is also so, like, we value the individual. You can be a Jim Jur from outer space, half-tree, trans woman, quadriplegic, person of color, and that makes you amazing. But at the same time, they want to push like social and communism, and that basically the concept of that is that you have to basically make everybody as equal as possible. And the only way you do that is by doing exactly what happened in this school. You kind of have to take excellence away from people, because that leads to jealousy, and it leads to competition, and it leads to unfairness. And that is something that is completely natural within human society. We will never reach a place of equality. It is literally impossible, because people are born innately with natural talent. Some people are more athletic, some people are more beautiful, some people are more intelligent. And the other, if the video could have been longer, I mean, this video is already going to be super long. You guys know how I am. You know how I roll. There's another book by the guy who wrote Slaughterhouse-Five, and I forget the name of this, and he kind of talked about that too, where they live in a society where beautiful people had to wear masks that made them look grotesque. People who are very athletic had to wear weights on them to weigh them down so that they all become equally lame or equally unspecial. And yeah, so anyway, take what you want out of that story, and now let's finally get into our book review that I recommend for the Democrats, liberals to read, to kind of get a little bit of an opposite perspective of the world, if you're open to it, which, I'm hoping that there's going to be people who view themselves as Republican, who are open to seeing some aspects of the Democrats, and there's people that maybe view themselves as liberal, who are willing to be open-minded enough to see also opposing views to their own. So this will probably not be a shock to anybody at all, but the first one, bing, is Animal Farm by George Orwell. Of course, amazing book and amazing message. Very similar also to what we just read. For those of you guys who have not read Animal Farm, this book takes place on a farm, and the animals on the farm overthrow their human holders, and after they throw that out, they kind of start thinking about, okay, now all the animals, we've kicked out the horrible humans, now we will come together as a community of animals and create this idyllic farm where everybody is equal and everything is great and everything is amazing. And basically, we will all do the equal amount of work, and it will be a utopia. And well, and through the book you see that that's not what ends up happening, because people will naturally try to grab power. And that is what ends up happening. Then again, the animals start to split, and again we see a divide where some animals start going higher on the ladder and some people start becoming the workers. And how basically at the very end of the book, they're in an even worse position than they were to begin with. So the book is basically a story about communism in the former USSR and how and why it failed. Okay, book number 2, The Brave New World. Huxley, one of my favorite books of all time, period, because it's amazingly written. Beautiful writing. In this book, we start off in a world where people think that life is this utopia, everybody has enough, everybody is equal, everybody has access to plenty, and yet we still find people who are unhappy, and we still find people who can't seem to fit into this system of this utopia ideal that has been created by the government. And the main protagonist then ends up going to a different part of the world where people who can't fit into the idyllic utopia get sent. And he there is then confronted with people who still feel the need to, excel at something, to be different from other people, to, to have freedom of choice, to have freedom of speech, to have freedom of intellect, something that is not acceptable anymore in this utopian world where everything is perfect and you have to say that everything is perfect at all times. Okay, number 3. Also sprach Zarathustra. What is the English title of that? So speaks. I can't even say that name in English. Zarathustra? Is that how you say it in English? I don't know how to say it in English. By Friedrich Nietzsche. I'm not going to lie to you guys, this is a very difficult read. I had to put this book down so many times because I was just like, oh my god. But the basic idea of the book, as far as I understood it, and I kind of read a little up like how other people interpret the book, but it's basically about what is best for humanity. Is it better for humanity that we try to help everyone, even people who wouldn't necessarily be able to survive in society? Or is it better that we take a more Darwinian stance to life? And Nietzsche's favorite term and the theme of the book is something called the Übermensch, which is like what would be the next step in the evolution, the next highest level of human existence. They're even more athletic, even more intelligent. And if that would not be a better end goal for humanity, if we allow Darwinian beliefs of natural selection and fighting and letting competition and fighting to be the best just naturally evolve in society. But I'm not gonna lie, it's a very difficult book to read, very difficult. Number 4, Lord of the Flies. This is a little short novella style book. And the one author that I have to look up, Golding, of course. Didn't have that one memorized. William Golding, of course. So in this book, we follow a group of young boys who are stranded on an island, and how, again, like most of these books you'll see, the whole idea is it natural for human society, for humans to be communal, or is it natural for people to automatically distinguish themselves via being smarter, being more athletic, being more vicious, being more power hungry, etc. And what happens in societies where we try to force this idea of camaraderie and communism on people versus just like, does it work, or does it eventually just fall apart and a natural hierarchy builds itself anyway? For those of you guys who follow my channel, you see that I personally believe that hierarchies are a natural aspect of human existence. This is one of the main reasons, again, why I don't believe that socialism and communism work, because humans don't want equality. Anybody who says that we want equality is lying. We all want to be at the top. We all want to do better. We all want to have more. Like, that's just human nature, and I don't even necessarily think that's anything shameful. Maybe you want equality to some degree within your friends and family, but true equality, you're not going to get me to believe that anybody wants that. Okay, and number 5, the book that I actually just finished last year. Did I finish it this year? I forget when I read this, but love. This is the best book, I think. If you, okay, sorry, I haven't even mentioned it yet. Atlas Shrugged by Ayn Rand. Again, very fat book, kind of a difficult read, definitely difficult to get into, even though I have to say that she was amazing in writing dialogue. And I think that is something that is very difficult to write. I think if a writer falls short in any aspect of writing, it's usually dialogue where they kind of fall flat, and she is amazing at dialogue. This book is about a woman who owns is part owner of a train company, and we live in I want to call it dystopian future, but it's kind of set in the 1920s. The vibe is like that. But when it was written, it would have been considered a dystopian future, dystopian past. And we are currently living in a time when the US is moving into a more and more socialist, more and more communist system. And this woman and a couple of her friends, who are all business owners, are trying desperately to keep their businesses functioning and trying to oppose the ever-increasing government takeover and rules, which are hurting everyone. And I'm setting it out this way. They never say capitalism or communism in the book. As I said, I didn't want to pick books that are so on the nose in terms of their messaging. But I think this book this book should be required reading in college for everyone, because I think it really shows how government control really hurts everyone in the long run. And anybody who's actually really studied communism and the fall of communism in the USSR, you will see that it is because of exactly these things. The government kind of saying, if you're going to have a train going this way, you have to have a train going that way because that's the fair way, and if this train costs this much, then you have to make this train cost that much. But what if this train line doesn't require as much service and this train line requires 10 times as much service? Then on this one, you're going to have overpacked trains that are going to get worn down too much because you were forced by the government to have a certain amount of train services. And in this one, it's going to end up having a huge loss because no one's using the train, and that's kind of what happens when you have governmental trying to force the equilibrium that supply and demand usually finds on its own. So if you don't read any other book on this list, I definitely think you have to read Atlas Shrugged. It is one of the best books ever written, especially part 1 and part 2. There's 3 parts. Part 3 gets a little adventurous to me, and I think kind of loses what to me the feel of the book was before. But definitely part 1 and part 2. I think it really will open your eyes to the reality of economics. Yeah. Alright, so I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Comments, feedback. Have you read any of these books? Did you like them? Did you not like them? Is there other books that you think maybe somebody who is liberal or democratic or sees themselves that way, that you think that they should maybe read to give them more of a different view of the world and maybe bring both factions back together so that we can talk again and kind of try to build a little bit more middle ground once again. So that's it. Take care. Bye.